In this first article, the organization discusses Swingli, how he realized already in the 16th century, when translating the Bible, that Jesus is the mediator between God and all men. However, this article is primarily addressed to people outside the Jehovah's Witnesses, and therefore makes no mention of how the organization actually teaches on this issue. Because in reality, according to the organization, Jesus is the mediator only for a limited number of people, which would be 144,000. This belief also results in more than 99% of Jehovah's Witnesses not partaking of bread and wine at the annual memorial of Jesus' death. This is because they do not believe they are in the new covenant with Jesus. The second article is also addressed to people outside the organization who are not familiar with the deep theology of Jehovah's Witnesses. This is where a strange choice of translation is revealed. The Finnish article says that Jesus is the only God-appointed mediator between us and God. But the English article from which this Finnish article is translated says, only Jesus is authorized by God to intercede on our behalf. Let's stop here for a moment. This article is about offering prayers to God. So the organization says that only Jesus has the God-given authority to pray for us. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Jesus should not be prayed to at all. And when a Jehovah's Witness prays, he prays only to Jehovah. Jesus, on the other hand, they believe, acts only as a kind of mechanical mediator of prayer. Kind of like a telephone operator delivering a text message to the right address. Jesus does not translate or change our prayers in any way, but Jehovah hears everything, even the unspoken sighs. And that in the meantime Jesus should only act as a kind of mechanical intermediary for the sighs. This is not how it works. Jesus is not a mechanical operator. Nor does it make sense that the organization teaches that Jesus is the mediator only for the so-called anointed, of whom there are 144,000. If Jehovah's Witnesses used their logical reasoning, they would very quickly realize that this is not the way it works. All Christians belong to the new covenant, all Christians partake of the bread and wine set forth by Jesus, and all Christians receive blessings by belonging to the new covenant, whatever their destination as chosen by God. There is simply no evidence in the Bible that Jesus is a mediator for only a small elite group, but not for the majority of Christians. The doctrine of the two different flocks of Jehovah's Witnesses cleverly confuses their thinking, and they fail to see how clearly the Bible speaks on this point. This teaching is one of the most outrageous ways to mislead sincere Jehovah's Witnesses, when they gather every year to celebrate the death of Jesus, yet the vast majority of them reject bread and wine and have no thought of belonging to the new covenant. In fact, they are not part of any covenant, because they are not in the new covenant, and they are not in the Mosaic covenant. I am sorry, but the unfortunate situation is that, because of this devious deception, their ability to benefit from Jesus' ransom is also being jeopardized. The governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses is already heavily blood-guilt. And this comes as a complete shock to those Jehovah's Witnesses who have imagined that Jesus would be their mediator. This was a shock to myself to realize. The organization teaches that this is not the case. Jesus is only the mediator of 144,000. But don't just take my word for it, but do a thorough investigation of this issue yourself. You owe it to yourself, and to God. And as you examine, you will find that time and time again the organization speaks of Jesus as mediator, only to the 144,000 members of the new covenant, no others. And when you try to look in their literature for a direct mention of Jesus being a mediator for the so-called great crowd as well, you won't find one. If they taught it, it should be easy to find. One last thing to conclude. The two articles in this video are aimed only at people outside the organization, to whom it is easy to convince of one thing or another. But when you dig deeper into how the Jehovah's Witnesses teach on this issue, things get really disturbing.